So we're gonna focus on free-to-play service games today. Again, the knowledge, however, the psychology is applicable to any kind of game and maybe even other products out there, even education, or if you want to keep your employees engaged, for example, at a company, when you're a company boss, this psychology also works for them. Actually, this is where I'm coming from, because I used to be an HR manager. One of my jobs in my very early career was actually making sure that the people stay in the company and are happy with staying at the company. The same stuff works in games. Same stuff works anywhere. You can even motivate yourself with that knowledge we're talking about today, but we want to focus on free-to-play and service games. I have a couple of examples there. My name is Patrick Rose. I'm a product strategy expert. Some people also call me game success expert because I research game success, what makes any type of game successful, no matter the business model or platform. I worked on a whole bunch of games you might have heard of. These are not all of them, just a few of them. And this is mainly here now AAA-ish kind of games, premium games, but I've been working on a lot of free-to-play games as well. Games that make $100,000 in revenue per day or more. This is the kind of games I worked on. And a whole bunch of partners, also not all of my partners here, but some of them. Ubisoft among them, Bandai Namco among them. And let's go. Why do you play games? We play games for entertainment. What is entertainment? When do we feel entertained? When do we feel engaged and fun, for example? In order to answer that question, we need to understand, why do people play in the first place? Why do we feel entertained? Why do we feel engaged? What does our brain try to tell us? Why does our brain reward us? Sense of achievement, but why is it a good thing for our brain to achieve something? What does the brain achieve? Feel good. The brain gives us rewards. That's in neuroscience now. Dopamine, for example, one of the nine neurotransmitters we know about these days. Dopamine is not the main thing. There's many more, but everyone only talks about dopamine. I know that. But when does the brain give us dopamine? Why does it do that? A reason that is important for our survival. To relieve stress, I would argue, yes, that can help to relieve stress as well. Why does our brain give us fun when we play with anything, with sand as a child? We are in the sandbox now. We're playing with the sand. Why is this already fun for us as a child? When we play with the sand, we are understanding something. We understand, wow, there's some kind of physics going on. The sand is falling down to the floor, right? That we feel the sand. We understand how sand works. The brain is making new connections. It's understanding stuff. We learn. Playing, what we always say, like, is for children and stuff, and games are not important and everything, is really, really important for our brain. We learn. When we don't learn, we don't have fun. When is that? When something's boring. You don't sit in the sandbox anymore most of the time, I guess. You don't do that anymore with the sand, right? You don't do that anymore. Why is that? Because you already know how sand works. It's not fun anymore. Your brain already made these connections. But that is already a game. So what is a game? A game is a play with rules. A play alone is not a game yet. As soon as we set a goal, a target, at least, at the minimum, then we have a game. When we add a timer to it, when we add other players to it, more rules, that's also still a game. Why do we create games at a time where we were still hunting our food? Maybe some of you guys are still doing that. Some people even do it for fun, hunting. It satisfies our brains, obviously. When we hunt the bunny, we get the bunny. And we have a lot of play in that. We don't call it play because it's serious. That's very interesting, by the way. As soon as something is serious, we don't call it play anymore. When you are at work and even you are having fun, you're playing around in your Excel sheets, we still don't call it play, or we don't call it a game. We call it work. But it's basically the same like a game. So in our modern society, we don't hunt bunnies anymore. We don't have that gratification. The gratification our brain gave to us when we finally got that bunny. We don't have that anymore, but our brain needs that. It wants that. So this is why these days we're creating something artificially to give us the gratification we got in the past when we were getting a bunny. This is why we are having fun with games these days. That is like very basic stuff, but that helps us a lot to understand where retention and user engagement is coming from. As games researchers, we look at humans first. If I understand how you work, how your brains work, I will also understand why you would play my game. When I ask people that question, why do you play games? What we see in the center, like very big, most people mention fun. Seems quite obvious, right? But what is that even? What is fun? Fun is also, you called it entertainment before. Also engagement, motivation, passion. All that thing is different words, but it's from a psychological viewpoint, it's all the same. And I will tell you now the secret of what fun is. Who actually wants to make fun games? Okay, a lot of people, not everyone. Okay.
You want their games to make money.
Yeah. And I see that, you know, I'm on the game design side, I'm also on the business side, right? I look through a lot of pitch decks. I did that for Bandai Namco for 3 years. I had hundreds of pitch decks in front of me. You wouldn't believe how many studios are saying, like, we want to make fun games. Then I go there and ask them, okay, how do you do that? What is fun? They don't have an answer on that.
How do you define fun? Something can be fun for me and something's not fun for you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And how is that? How does it work? How do you define that? I got the answers for you today. So fun is not a very scientific term. It's something we try to express. We try to express that feeling. I'm very passionate about something. I'm having fun with it. Depending on the context, we use different words, but it basically all means the same thing. And I tell you that secret now. It's A, R, and C. The A stands for, who knows that already? Autonomy. Autonomy means we all want to make our own decisions and they should feel impactful. If I tell you, please do this, and you don't know why, you don't understand why, you don't feel very motivated doing that. But if it's your own decision, I want to do that because, I don't know, I want to be creative, or I think that it's a good idea, it's the right thing to do in life, and it has impact, this is where we feel motivated. We always want to achieve this autonomy in our lives. If we don't feel like that, we get frustrated. On the job, in education, in games as well. If a tutorial keeps telling me, do this, do this, do this, do this, and I don't even know why, the tutorial is not fun to me, it's not engaging, I drop off. I'm out. Early retention, dead. Give players autonomy right away with a tutorial. Significant decision making. Relatedness is the R. Relatedness is a funny word, I know. There's a reason why the psychology literature doesn't call it social. But it's basically socializing. We want to be with each other. That's a very human thing to do. This is why humankind made it that far. The first time humans really evolved a lot, I don't know if that's actually true, but I would argue that might be true, is when someone broke his leg or her leg and another human came over and helped them. Because otherwise in nature, you break a leg, you're basically dead. But another human helps you out, you survive. Relatedness is something that is so important for our brains. And I do a very small, tiny experiment, and you know it already, you're scared already. Look to your partner on your left or right side, depending on what makes sense. I know it's uneven numbers, but not everyone can play now. But let's say the two of you, and the two of you, and 1, 2, 3. Do what I do with Nissi now. You look each other with your partner into the eyes. Into the eye. There we go already. I don't even need to do more. Experiment done. Did you see that reaction? Did you hear that? Did you notice? Almost every one of you guys were suddenly smiling, starting to look into the eyes. Experiment not done. Let's keep going. Hi, Nissi. Look into each other's eyes, please. Do you feel something? Do you, Nissi?
Funny way.
Okay. Next step. Keep looking into each other's eyes and move a little closer. Okay, done. That's enough. It's enough. But that is the power of relatedness. Just because there's another human in front of us and our brain recognizes that there's so much happening in our... I get goosebumps looking into that. There's a physical reaction. That is motivation. We are motivated to react in a certain way. We just need to learn how to use that in games, for example, at work. At work, you should be more careful with these kind of things. And also in education, we do so much for other people. This is extremely powerful. Extremely powerful if it comes to engagement. C.
Competence.
Competence, what does that mean? That is actually the thing I was talking about in the beginning, the most classical thing. Learning, understanding, the brain builds new connections. We improve. A lot of people here refer, instead of to competence, they refer to the flow theory. Probably everyone has heard of flow. A lot of people say that flow is that one thing you have to focus on. Shouldn't be too easy, shouldn't be too difficult. Keep people in the flow channel. And a lot of people out there say this is the only thing you should focus on if it comes to games. No, it's about 1/3 of all the things that are important for user engagement. Flow is important. If you know how to get people into the flow, into the competence factor, that is great. But you will miss out on relatedness and autonomy if you don't know the full spectrum.
For relatedness, I'm curious, single player, like heavy story games like BioWare.
Oh, yeah.
And now when it comes to, are they finding the relatedness from the characters? Is that how you get the relatedness out of single player games?
That is an extremely good question. You are ahead already of this presentation. We asked that question as games researchers. We asked that questions ourselves. In my very early years, I was working on browser games, and the bosses of that company said, we don't need story in our games because that doesn't make our free-to-play games successful. Story, who cares about story and characters, right? So, no, apparently that's all stuff we don't need. Well, we did the research on that. And psychology says this is also relatedness, actually, eventually. And that is one of the reasons why story and characters in your games might be important. What is your favorite game of all time?
That's too hard of a question.
What is one of... But you mentioned BioWare. What is your favorite BioWare game?
I'm saying Dragon Age.
Oh.
But I'm cheating because I made them.
Mine is Mass Effect. And yes, characters in a game, story. When you have story in a game, why is story important in a game? Story is only working when there's actual characters in the game. The story is channelized through. Without characters, we have been playing that mind game a little bit. What happens if you create a story and there's no characters, nothing humans can relate to, but there's still a story, like a planet being attacked by a, like, I don't know, like a meteoroid coming down and an asteroid coming down and trying to hit the planet, and there's like a big explosion. No one cares until there's a little girl in a village and there's other people and the girl is getting scared. And this is when people start to care. The story, the lore of your world is only important because you have people in your game, which is relatedness. It's socializing. Artificial relatedness, which is, by the way, not really explained by the psychology. The reason for that is the literature and psychology doesn't really think about these things, artificial characters. This is our research actually done, and we have been testing that later, and we have the data proof on that later as well. It does improve retention, characters in the game. However, there's something else. I think I can't go that deep today to give you the exact examples. I have that in my course or in my online content on YouTube. There is a difference between social relatedness and non-social relatedness. The non-social relatedness is what you're mentioning, the story, the lore, the characters in your game. That can be strong. We can have feelings for the characters. When stuff happens in Mass Effect, your characters die or something like this, some of your characters, it's sad. We like these characters. Maybe we even fall in love with game characters. We also see that kind of happening. However, the data shows us and user behavior, and one game in particular, which I love to mention, which is Journey. Can't go into detail there, but I have a whole 30 minutes video on game design of Journey on YouTube. Look that up later. It shows us that social relatedness is usually much stronger than non-social relatedness. But non-social relatedness is more accessible because we don't need other people to feel that. This is why there's a lot of people who would argue, I like solo player games more than multiplayer games. Not because they are necessarily more engaging and keep you engaged for a longer time. We don't see that in the data. People get more engaged always with multiplayer games, always. But solo player games are just more accessible. I don't need to take a shower to speak to my friends in the game, for example. I don't even need to put on clothes. Yes?
Because a lot of, when you ask people whether they know that actual psychology behind it or not, a lot of the answers I get from them wanting to not play multiplayer games is the social anxiety.
Social anxiety.
How does that then relate to this?
Social anxiety, accessibility. Social anxiety, why do we have anxiety? It's difficult to talk. It is causing me so much stress to be here in front of you guys. This is exhausting. I had to learn that for 10 years to speak in front of you guys, to not be overly nervous anymore, to speak in front of you guys. 10 years of training, that is not accessible. It's still fun and engaging. Maybe you see that. I have a lot of passion for that. I like speaking in front of you. But it's not accessible. You have to learn that. That is social anxiety. It's not that we are being pushed away. Motivation isn't like escapism. We try to get away from things so much. Motivation is drawing us to things. I'm being drawn to this, but there are obstacles. Social anxiety, I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing in front of you guys. The stress and everything that keeps me away. That is social anxiety. And this is also why a lot of people would rather play a solo player game in comparison to a multiplayer game. We are having a lot of conversation already, and this is great. That also means that we will have to skip a few examples later, but this is already great stuff. No, this is really exciting. We are talking over there, you have an industry expert. These 3 factors are called self-determination theory by Ryan and Deji. They have a lot of experiments going on since the 70s already. We have this knowledge since the 70s. It's being used more and more since the 2000s by a lot of industries. For any reason, the games industry is still behind, is still using models like Bartle. Who has been working with Bartle? Bartle's taxonomy of player types. Yeah? What do you think of that?
Well, I have no tool that's better, so it makes sense to me. Different player motivations and archetypes.
You know Bartle's opinion on Bartle's model? Bartle says it's outdated. Made in the 90s, with the type of MMORPGs at that time. Who played MMORPGs in the 90s where there was barely any internet around? Almost no one. And male, almost entirely male. Very narrow target group for a very specific genre that basically doesn't exist in this form anymore. This does not show us the full spectrum at all. All it tells us is what kind of categories we were roughly able to create at that time of people playing this very specific thing. And that was maybe how many people were asked? I think less than 10,000 people. We have data here of millions or billions of people, especially in our free-to-play games these days, where we can verify that stuff. This psychology is focusing on people first, not on particular products and only people who are dealing with that product. Bartle, in my opinion, is outdated. This is different. We have to learn this first, but when you get this, it will get you very far. This is all intrinsic motivation. You have heard that term, I guess. Self-determination theory of human intrinsic motivation. It's also known as what people, when they say they are having fun, passion, immersion, satisfaction, flow, engagement, it's all just intrinsic motivation. Different words for that in different contexts, but it's all intrinsic motivation. That is what we want to focus on with all of our game features if we want to make our game fun. This is all you need to know. You don't know why your game is not fun? Think through these factors. And the nice thing about it is, use Autonomy with the explanations. I also have it on my in my online content. You can't read it very well here now, but this graphics on my LinkedIn posts and stuff, you can find it everywhere. Or you just write me, I send it to you. The nice thing about these factors is we can find synergies. We can combine autonomy with competence or competence with relatedness. Let's say we have a competence game, Tetris, or any kind of shooter game, maybe a shooter game. Single player of Halo. The single player campaign, very competence focused, shooting and so on, becoming better at the mechanics, killing up the aliens and everything. And then you combine that with relatedness, Halo multiplayer. And what is played more, the single player campaign of Halo or the multiplayer of Halo? Multiplayer, yes. Much more engagement. Single player is played a few times, a few hours. Multiplayer is played for months, years maybe. You add in some autonomy, equipment systems, decision-making, important decision-making, strategy, tactics, and you have a very successful game potentially. For as long as you have more of this stuff than other games within your field. So you mix it all together in a smart way, you have really high player engagement. Some game examples for autonomy, I will make it really quick now. In my course, you will have very detailed examples, plus game features and everything, right? Autonomy, Grand Theft Auto. Why? Why is Grand Theft Auto and who has played a GTA game? Why is GTA a good example for autonomy? Yeah, you can do anything in there. It's your decision to make stuff. But there's one other important factor to it. When I have GTA in comparison to No Man's Sky, who knows No Man's Sky? A few people. No Man's Sky has billions of planets to discover. Every planet is different with their own animals, with their own like nature stuff going on, different colors and everything. Should actually, you have so much more stuff to do potentially than in GTA. But the original version of No Man's Sky still was not fun to people. Now they have improved it a lot. But originally, it was not fun, despite this huge open world thing where you can travel anywhere. Why is that? What was missing? Important decision making is really, really important. If you don't have the feeling the decisions you're making have impact, then it doesn't matter. Another example is Detroit. Here, it's where you feel it like very well in comparison to Beyond. Who knows Detroit or Heavy Rain? Okay, nice. Detroit and Heavy Rain both have several characters you can play, and both games already tell you early on, you make the wrong decision, your characters might die, and they remain dead for the rest of the story. The story changes. Then who has been playing Beyond Two Souls? Okay, yeah, same studio, same type of game, you would argue. Well, it even has Willem Dafoe in it. You would argue, well, that should do just as good as Detroit and Heavy Rain. It did not. It did not perform that well. People say they don't like the story as much as in the other games. This is what you see in the reviews because they don't understand their own psychology. The truth is, from a psychological angle, the decisions making in Beyond Two Souls were not that much of significance. Why is that? How many characters did Beyond Two Souls feature? Basically, you play one woman in that game. One girl, one woman in different periods of her life. When you play only one character, you know the story, well, she cannot die. At least not in the beginning of the story or in between of the story. No matter what decision you make, right? So there's no significance to your decision making. There's nothing at stake, and the story feels more empty. And then people say something like, I don't like the story so much. If people answer that, publishers would now say, okay, we need better writers. But you don't need better writers, you need more autonomy, more significant decision making, because they had the same writers in that game. That is autonomy for you. Relatedness, Fortnite. You play together, a lot of freedom, 100 people in one arena. There's a lot of cooperation and competition, all that stuff going on. Final Fantasy VII, and this is exactly your example, also has lots of relatedness, non-social relatedness, because you love these characters. You're very sad if a particular character in that game dies. Competence, Dark Souls, difficult when you beat the bosses and everything. That is really, really satisfying and fun. Overcoming these challenges, learning. And another game like that, Candy Crush Saga. Why is that here? Competence is basically flow. Dark Souls is good for people who are already a little bit trained in these kind of games, who can deal with more difficult games, obstacles in the beginning of the game already. It's not very accessible. And then it keeps you in the flow. Then it puts you into a flow because it has it gives you a lot of opportunity to learn and become better. Candy Crush Saga, on the other hand, does the same thing from a psychological angle. They give you the opportunity to learn, become better all the time, but with much lower obstacles. But I tell you what, people who enjoy Dark Souls also enjoy Candy Crush Saga. People who play Dark Souls a lot potentially play even much more Candy Crush Saga. And there's another factor coming in, and that is accessibility. So, intrinsic motivation means fun. There's also extrinsic motivation. That's like rewards, money, and so on. But why would I focus rather on intrinsic motivation? We have a problem here. Rewards in games, and we use rewards way too much these days in games. Achievement systems like PlayStation trophies, gamer score on Xbox, and on Steam, the achievements, they destroy, I know you won't believe it, but they destroy your game fun. You focus at some point too much on the achievements. They still engage you to play the game. But there is a problem, and it does undermine, without you noticing, it does undermine your intrinsic motivation. And that one doesn't come back easily. This is why many of us, the little bit older people of us, say these days that games are not as much fun anymore as they were when we still played like on the Super Nintendo or Super Famicom at that time. Because these days games focus a lot on achievements, and that destroys our fun. We don't have the same feeling anymore until we play Zelda Breath of the Wild. Because that game doesn't bother you with achievements and a lot of rewards or anything. It focuses much more on intrinsic motivation. And for any reason, it feels like in the past again. Because they get it right. Nintendo gets it right there. They focus on intrinsic motivation. This is called the over-justification effect. You might know extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Over-justification effect, almost nobody knows. And we don't want to believe it. You get paid for something you love. You stop loving that thing. You don't get paid for it anymore. You stop doing that thing for the rest of your life, which you used to love when you were a child. Artists often have that problem. artists don't want to do art anymore as soon as they get paid for making art. And then that doesn't come back easily. The enjoyment of that, the intrinsic motivation doesn't come back easily. Same thing in games. We have to restrict ourselves. It's easy to make extrinsic incentives, login bonuses and stuff. It's easy. It improves the KPIs even in the first place, like your day one retention, your stickiness, DAU-MAU ratio, daily active users to monthly active users ratio, which is an important factor for stickiness, will be improved if you focus on extrinsic incentives. But, and all these product managers doing that, they get a bonus for that. They get like applause. Great, well done, stickiness improved. But in the long run, what we don't see, it destroys over the years the intrinsic motivation of the players. You want to keep your players for more than a couple of months. You don't want to have the typical login bonuses in your games.
There's a classic experiment done actually at Stanford many years ago in which children in nursery school and kindergarten drew pictures. And they drew pictures because they like to draw. The researchers took kids that like to draw and they started giving them a reward for drawing. The reward generally was a gold star or something that a young child would find rewarding. Then they stopped giving them the gold star. And what they found is the children had a much lower tendency to draw on their own. No reward. Now, remember, this was an activity that prior to receiving a reward, the children intrinsically enjoyed and selected to do. No one was telling them to draw. What this relates to is so-called intrinsic versus extrinsic reinforcement. When we receive rewards, even if we give ourselves rewards for something, we tend to associate less pleasure with the actual activity itself that evoked the reward. Now, that might seem counterintuitive, but that's just the way that these dopaminergic circuits work.
All right, master all that stuff. You will be good at retention. Consider these things. I do that. That's my philosophy with every feature I design. I consider these things, all of this, with every single feature I design. Even a jumping feature. How can I add competence to a jumping feature? Well, you have to master the jumping, like in Super Mario. It's not easy to perform like really tricky jumps in Super Mario, and they give you a lot of options for jumping. Autonomy. In most Mario games, you have different types of jumps. You make the decision, which jump do I now choose to get over here? Relatedness, Super Mario, well, kind of has it, because there's some multiplayer Mario games where you can jump on each other. Another example is Journey for relatedness. When there's another character, the jumping feature is basically flying, and you give each other flying energy when you're close to each other. Relatedness. You help each other, support each other. Simple jumping feature. Simple as that. You can make it so much more engaging thinking of these three factors. But you need to understand these factors if you want to be very effective with your user engagement and gameplay fun. We analyzed the market by that, by the way, after this model at Bandai Namco. We checked top 100 games in profit of all time. They are almost all great at mixing these factors together very, very well. World of Warcraft, for example. Relatedness, you have alliances, people play together. Autonomy, you have to make a lot of important decisions in the game. Even starting with creating your character will have a lot of impact on your entire journey. Competence, you have so much progression, learning, highly engaging. You don't need to create such a huge game in order to satisfy all three factors. It also works in smaller versions. Now, this is all the theory. I have a whole bunch of examples here with me now. Since we already talked a lot, we don't need to go through all of them. But maybe 2 or 3 of them would be really nice. Login bonus, I talked about it already. Problem with login bonus, extrinsic incentive. You hear that often from the players, actually. Maybe you yourself said it once. You only come back to the game to pick up your daily login bonus, and then you get off again. Also, the Duolingo problem. Anyone tried using Duolingo, learning a language? At some point, yeah, you have the daily streak, right? In the beginning, you're very motivated to learn the language because you want to communicate with other people, relatedness, you want to improve, learn something, competence, all that stuff. But at some point, the Duolingo will keep giving you like bonus points for just coming back every day, doing like at least 5 minutes. You would argue that's a good thing. When I at least start 5 minutes, maybe I keep going. But almost everyone falls into that trap that we will not do more than 5 minutes anymore. Only what we need to do to get the streak. This is where it shifted already. However, you can create a login bonus that focuses on intrinsic motivation. My design philosophy is now think of the 3 factors. How can I add more autonomy to it? How can I make important decisions if it comes to the login bonus? Maybe I pick my own login bonus. I'm saying I want to come back for the next 30 days, like a bank in the game or something. You make an investment in the bank. It's my own decision, strategic decision. And I want to come back for the next 30 days. And I can even choose what kind of rewards I want to have over that period. Strategic decision making. This is an intrinsic way. Maybe it doesn't help me directly. Maybe I don't get a reward when I come back, but maybe it helps my alliance members. That is relatedness. So the alliance members might also say, hey, everyone, please log in, come play with us, do this and this, and then we get all our alliance reward. Then it's focusing on relatedness, on intrinsic motivation, and so on. This is how I go through these features. I turn that whole thing around. When I look at games for my clients, I look at this, what is extrinsically driven and what is intrinsically driven. And everything that is extrinsically driven, I would attack first and try to turn that whole thing around. That can be really powerful, and it will lead to a lot of innovation. You would be surprised. We always think like more innovation so difficult, but it's not if we just understand how psychology works. You will create a lot of very innovative ideas that are proven by psychology at least. Accessibility is very, very important if it comes to retention too. The main reason why free-to-play is successful. Out of a sudden, everyone can play free-to-play games. Everyone who could not achieve before in a console or PC or anything, they can now on their phones just play a free-to-play game and enjoy it. Accessibility is basically the key that opens the door to monetization, engagement, and user acquisition. No matter how great your game is, if you don't master accessibility, that door will remain closed. I have one example for you. Retention starts already here with the loading screen of your game. How do you design your loading screen of your game? That's probably one of the first things players see when they start up your mobile game, for example. Let's look at Clash of Clans, super successful example. Even here, I would improve a few things. First thinking accessibility, and then also thinking the motivational factors. How can I engage people enough already in the loading screen? How do you engage people with your loading screen? How do you do that?
I guess you can add some objects that you can play around with. Like
maybe something. Some games have like some mini games here already. Yes. Text at the bottom that changes. Maybe something that teaches you something about the game. Maybe some secrets even. Some valuable secrets you only put on the loading screen. People learn and think like, oh wow, and then they want to try it out in the game. Not just boring tutorial stuff everyone knows, but just something special. Yeah. Telling a story? Yeah, you can already tell a story here. Something is going on here already. There is a story. This guy is fighting that guy and so on. The art, the visuals, of course. Make it moving also, maybe like some very micro engagement going on here. The whole screen here of Clash of Clans is actually not moving. That is a problem. Why is that a problem? Because if it's stuck here, people might think something is wrong. Maybe it's only stuck for 3 seconds, but then people already start thinking something's wrong. You see that in your data, people drop off. You always want to show them something is moving. Even if it's not loading, keep it moving slowly. Keep it moving slowly. Maybe show a percentage, something like that. So these kind of things can engage people already. Loading screen alone. You're welcome because you now already improve your retention, very early retention. Did you?
Yeah, I was going to ask. So I see RNC in that loading screen. The story kind of adds the relatedness. And then
Yeah.
we talk about GameDev. That's the competence. Is there any? Oh, and the A would be in the game meeting games that people play.
Yeah.
I forgot about that one already. Okay, never mind.
The mini games, for example, that's a little bit of more resources already, right? But you could create a mini game here that pays into, why not into the relatedness account? If you're successful in the mini game here, maybe that is almost your login bonus already. If you're successful in the mini game here, only once per day when you load it up, your alliance will have a bonus and they will say thank you to you maybe. This is how you can combine that. And you only get to these ideas if you understand the psychology. Okay, next example, intro movie. Who has an intro movie in their free-to-play mobile game? Who thinks this is a good idea? Or maybe we could also say a start screen. I see some mobile games still having start screens where you have to tap in order to start the game. That is an obstacle. That lowers accessibility. You lose people there. Don't have start screen. Intro movie can be engaging. I must say, when your intro movie, however, is more engaging than your gameplay, maybe you should become movie directors instead of game makers. Intro movies sometimes work. But if you have them, I would make them like really short, really engaging right away, maybe create some relatedness, but super, super quick, maybe less than 5 seconds. And then let them just jump into the game. In my world, the best case scenario is gameplay right away, first 3 seconds fun. Tutorial.
the music is coming up, you're ready for your first battle, the scene is so cool, the camera is so cool, the graphics are cool, everything amazing, and music comes up, do, 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 and then text box. And I'm like, what the heck? Just let me fight. I'll figure that out. And if not, you can still help me. You can still support me. Why can I not fight right now?
Let me figure it out myself. Autonomy. I want to try first myself. If I can't handle it, then the game can help me a little bit. But then I already have the engagement to ask that question. But don't answer that question I didn't even have in the first place. AAA developers keep making that mistakes. AAA tutorials most of the time are horrible. A lot of the game guidance in AAA games is really bad. If they just would overcome that proud and looked at some hyper casual games, which are horrible bad games, they would learn so much about this, how to teach people complex mechanics in a very simple, accessible, and fun way, instead of putting a text box in front of your face. Supercell has learned that. Supercell text box, this is Clash of Clans, right? How old is that now? 14 years or something? Here's some autonomy going on in the tutorial already. I can pick where I put my stuff there. And the first battle is coming up. And I'm kind of winning that battle, which is a good thing. First match, always let people win, or at least close to win, so that they understand they can improve and that they know how to improve. Competence factor. I want to feel competent, or I want to learn and understand. It's not necessarily about the win, about understanding how to win. Supercell has learned a lot since then. The newest game, the latest game, this is basically the start of the latest game. Gameplay, go! First 3 seconds. Just walk around, just do it. You can battle alone. You can figure it out yourself. Autonomy. Only if I don't understand what's going on, the game tells me a little bit with few words. But I'm playing already. I'm engaged. I'm having fun already. All the 3 competence vectors, we can't watch the whole video now, but they are all in there, right? And I thank you so much for your attention.